how to play Mapping the Catacombs. Mapping the Catacombs is a solo roll and write game by Madsen. It's a somewhat complicated game in a viewed form. However, the actual system behind it is really quite simple. It's agnostic as well, which means that you can play with other game systems if you so wish to combine it. Originally, it started as a pamphlet and then it became a zine, which is 16 pages long, and then actually it has been expanded out to a full book, which can be purchased depending on the value that you go for, be that a PDF or a hardback, anywhere from about $4 to $14. I personally suggest starting with the zine, although if you do like it, I would suggest then getting the book as well, because there's an expanded set of character information in there. There's extra little bits of information, and I think it's definitely worth the sort of couple of dollars that you would have to pay to get it, and it's about 76 pages as well. Both of the other two, the zine and the pamphlet, are name your own price or essentially free, so I definitely would suggest giving this game a go. In order to play, you're going to need paper, pencil, you're going to need a coin, and that's actually quite important for this game, and then you're going to need 2 6-sided die, although if we're being realistic, you probably could use 1 d6 and then simply roll it twice in order to play. Essentially, the game comes down to a very simple system. Every single turn is made up of 4 separate steps. First of all, you draw a circle. This circle represents the room in the catacomb that you're in. You then roll for the contents, and then you resolve whatever those contents may be. They vary depending on the 2d6 table that you're looking at. You then roll for chamber connections, and you choose a path which to exit on. Now, this is the choice essentially that you have. You can choose whatever exit you wish to. However, this is where the slight complication comes in and where the fun of this game comes in. The final step is to roll a d6 for Catacomb Confusion. Essentially what this does is push you down one of the other exits within your chamber. Now, this could be that you simply roll exactly the same exit that you've previously had, or it could be that you're looking to go through a completely different one, or it could be that you're looking to go back to where you were as well. It really depends what you roll on that d6, be that 1 hash mark to the left or 2 hash marks to the right or something like that, and it really adds a bit of flavour for every single roll that you have. Because you slowly keep adding circles on top of each other, going through exits that you both want to and don't want to, the map becomes very confusing, and it really sort of lives up to the idea of a catacomb. The second part of this game is that you need to keep light. In the catacombs, it's very dark, and as a result you need to light your way. Because of the nature of the map and because it's so confusing and there's this movement that you have that you don't initially plan yourself, keeping light is vitally important in this game. If you run out of light, essentially you're dead. In order to win the game, you simply need to enter the catacombs, find the treasure, and then hopefully exit the treasure without running out of both life or light. In order to start this game, you do need to prepare for your adventure, and that does include character or characters. It is purely up to you. It is a very hard game, and as a result, I would suggest initially, at the very least, is to select at least 1 or more characters to play through. You can play a series of different characters depending on which version that you have. There are more, but for example, you could have a blacksmith or a brute or a farmhand or something like that. They do have some slight differences. However, generally speaking, there isn't much in regards to difference for this. This is more flavour that you need to put in. You then also roll a d6 for the hit points of that physical person. Now, this does lead into some odd situations. For example, you could have a brute that only has 2 health points, and you also could have something like a farmhand that has 6. The idea is you're meant to come up with some type of backstory for these to kind of explain exactly what's happening. However, however many characters that you have, you essentially play the 4 main steps exactly the same as you would previously. You don't play it per character, and as a result you still do play it solo. Essentially this means then that you have a point man, or someone that's physically at the front that does all the instances or contents of each room, and then they physically can be switched out for someone else if, for example, their health is low, or if they need to because, for example, there's no light. In addition to picking your adventure or adventurers, you then also need to determine your source of light, which is actually quite important. The idea here is that you need to flip a coin, and if it's heads, it's a lantern. If it's tails, it's something like a torch, and then you roll a 2d6 to find out how much oil or plant material that you have. It is the one thing that you really want to roll well. You want as much as you possibly can, because believe me when I say this, you will be using a lot of light. So let's start by playing a quick round. So first of all, we'll start by drawing a circle. As this is our first chamber, I'm just going to make a few other chambers in the background for you, just so you can see what it may be at this particular time. You then draw an arrow in the circle to mark your entrance. Obviously that's going to be at the bottom in this particular instance, and then we're going to roll a 2d6. Now this is the first roll, and it comes to the Catacomb chamber contents. Essentially this is exactly what's happening within your chamber. So let's do a quick roll, and in this roll we're going to get 4. In this case it's a falling skeletons. That is specifically from the zine rather than the pamphlet or book. They both have different and varied information. The book obviously has considerably more, and so just bear in mind that this is just specifically from the zine. Part of the wall crumbles in front of you and bones tumble out. There is a coin toss, and if you get a heads, the point man will have an impact and a result of d6 damage, or for tails you can dodge and get 3 XP. Now we will quickly mention XP here. Now depending on the particular instance that you get, you can essentially use XP as a means of trade in addition to gold, or sometimes as well as or instead of gold, and that can benefit you in some way or another. It's essentially just another resource that you can physically use. After we've gone through the instance, and let's say our brute was damaged by 2 damage, then roll a d6 for the number of connecting chambers. In this instance we've got 6, so we mark those down. We then roll a d6 again. Now this is for the Catacomb Confusion. Depending on the roll is depending on exactly where we're going to end up. So the first thing that we need to do is mark where we want to leave. So I've marked it here with a small dot. The d6 has marked down as a 5, which is 1 hash mark to the right of where we want to go. As a result, we're going to have to roll another circle, and in this instance we're actually running it over another catacomb room. As a result, you can start to see the complication that comes through, and then simply we play the game over and over again until eventually we come up with the treasure that we are aiming to find, and then once we find it we then leave again. It's worth noting that once you've been in a room, that room is essentially then empty, and as a result, if you go back through exactly the same chamber that you previously went through, you can then roll to go through another room directly without having to do any contents or resolving of any encounters that happen. It really is a fun game. Generally speaking, it lasts about 30 minutes, although if you know what you're doing, it can last even less. There are some, let's say, interesting endings to a few of the different roles that you can have here, particularly one that I like to say is Lost in the Catacombs. So as you go through here, you will find some fear level increases and fear level decreases as well. Essentially there are whispering voices that are slowly coming to you, and eventually you lose your way and you just simply don't know a way through. Now depending if you do eventually get to a sanity level high enough, you can then flip or roll in order to work out exactly what's going to happen. Now that I won't spoil them for you because there are some really fantastic things in there, but for example you could gouge your own eyes out and return to sanity, but of course then you're blind. How are you going to deal with that? Or you could turn yourself over to the macabre and become a ghoul. Honestly, there are some absolutely fantastic things in there. Considering this game is only a couple of dollars, it definitely is worth getting, and if I were you, I would definitely check it out whenever you can. Thank you for listening, and I hope you subscribe and enjoy yourself today. Happy gaming.